Standards on the side.
And you guys are live.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our village board meeting, July 6, 2022. Superintendent Collins will lead us in a pledge of allegiance if you'd all stand.
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Today is an exciting day. We have a new electees on our board. We're very excited about it. We have Sarah Amidon to my right, and we have Kerry Doyle to my left. So congratulations to them. Today makes history because it's the first time in the history of East Hampton Village that we have a female majority board. So it's exciting too. So first thing we're going to do this morning is we're going to ask Sarah and Kerry to come up to the podium with our village clerk for their swearing in.
That I will support the Constitution. Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of trustee according to the best of my ability.
Thank you very much. Let's. Exciting day. Very happy with this. All right. Our first presentation is our historian, Hugh King. You know what? Let's just take 5 minutes if we want to do any photos with family, and then we can let the family leave if they choose not to stay for the rest of the meeting. So let's take a 5-minute break. Yeah, let's do some photos.
Okay.
It's all right, but to let people leave.
Yeah. We can let people
I'm a fan, you know.
Thanks, everybody, for coming. That was very nice.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, if we could get back to our meeting. Thank you all. Exciting day for everybody, including me.
They need to drain.
All right, the chief found a seat. It's good. Dave? All right, LTV, we ready?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Good. All right, thank you, everybody, for that brief break. And now up is our historian, Hugh King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. History has been made in the last couple of months, both in the town and the village. I think for the first time, there's been a woman's name attached to a building when you're going to be putting Katie Babcock's name on one of the buildings down at Georgia Beach. Somebody correct me eventually if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's ever happened before. We've had our first Juneteenth presentation ceremony in the village. In the town, I think for the first time, there's been an African-American name put on a location. Lee Hayes, the great Tuskegee Airman, has been put on the park down on Abrams Landing Road. We had the first gay pride parade in the history of the town and the village. And now for the first time in the 375 history of the town and the 100th anniversary of the village, there are more women on the town and village boards than men. Okay. Now, when that really shows progress is when we don't have to mention it again. All right. Now, I wanted to find out, well, who was the first woman to be elected to any position in the village? And I thought it was Mrs. Benjamin, who was actually appointed the first hostess at Home Sweet Home Museum when it opened up in 1928, but it wasn't her. Then I thought it was Mrs. Lamona King, who was elected village collector in 1925, but I was wrong again. It was Mrs. John C. Hand, who was elected collector in 1924. Now, I don't know what happened to her and why they had another election a year later, but now the village collector or village clerk is an appointed position. So the next time I come, I'll have some more information about these three women, but history has been made.
It's great. Hugh, before you go, so we had started the renaming of some, or additionally naming some of our roads after the former mayors, and we've kind of stopped. We had a break in that. So I'd like to get that back on the agenda.
I'm ready.
Okay.
We usually do it like on a Saturday around 2.
Yeah, but then we usually invite the families and let them know when we're going to do it. So maybe we could do the next one for our August meeting, and that'll give the family time to be here, and we'll do the Saturday after the Friday board meeting.
Okay, I'm going to write it down right now.
Okay. And then the other thing that you and I talked about, some of our historic buildings that have been used by our municipality for different things, like the police station on Newtown. The Eileen Fisher building on Newtown was used many, many years ago for village functions, village government. And we wanted to talk to those owners and see if we can install a plaque on those buildings. So like, for an example, would be the village police station was in service from whatever year it went into service till 1990 when it went, and we moved here. So I've got the ending date. I just don't have the beginning date. But that's the kind of thing I think would be nice to do.
Well, isn't there a bank that used to be village headquarters too, right?
It was
On Main
Village
Street?
Hall.
Village Hall.
Now it's
yeah.
Brown Harris Stevens.
Yeah, that famous
on Main
historic
Street.
landmark amendment village. Okay.
So those are kind of the things I like to do. The other thing, I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I have your attention.
Okay.
Our work session meetings, which will start in September, we're going to choose a different historic location for each of our work session. And LTV is going to broadcast it remotely. So we're going to start
Oh, okay.
So September, our first meeting in September, whatever the date is, 6th, I think it is the first Thursday. We're going to start in Village Hall. So what I'd like you to do is prepare something to speak about for each historic location.
You got it.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
Okay, and you're going to make a schedule out of the other places that you're going to go,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
that's it. Okay.
I have to
Okay,
get permission from the different locations first, and then I'll.
so
from
history is
there.
going to be made again.
It's correct. Thank you very much, you. So next up is our sewer system consultant. But before you start, Pio Lombardo and Associates, I'd like Mr. Hayjack, our village planner, just to give a little history of where we have started and where we are now as far as forming this sewer district. Sorry to hit you
That's okay.
cold, but you have all this in your
That's
head.
fine. Good morning, everybody. So the dates are a little rough, but I believe it was 2017, then Board of Trustees retained an engineering consulting firm to do a sort of a revitalization plan for the downtown core commercial area. And part of that study was the establishment of a sewer district and determining appropriate locations where the effluent could be treated. Once COVID hit, that study was sort of sidelined or put on the back burner. Their work was never fully completed to the degree where they published an actual report. And then in 2000, I think, was it 20 or 21, Pio Lombardo was retained. And his work was to pick up where they left off. It was to do a peer review of what work had been conducted to date, and then offer his recommendations on alternative locations and designs for sewer systems. So that's kind of in a nutshell.
Right.
Yep.
Great. I just want to bring everybody up to speed.
Sure.
So, June, if you could just do roll call before PO starts.
Sure. Mayor Jerry Larson,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Chris Minardi,
Here.
Trustee Sandra Melendez.
Here.
Trustee Carrie Doyle,
Here.
Trustee Sarah Amadin.
Here.
Administrator Marcos Belladron.
Here.
Village Attorney Vinnie Messina.
Here.
Chief Tracy.
Here.
Planner Billy Hayjack.
Present.
Fire Chief Forrester.
It's not here.
Ken Cullum.
Not here.
Tom Priato.
Here.
Drew Smith.
Here.
And Dave J. Cox.
Here.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. All right, PO, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Pio Lombardo of Lombardo Associates. We're environmental engineers, and we have a long history of working in the village and in East Hampton, going back to work that we started on a townwide comprehensive wastewater management plan that we completed back in 2013. And at that time, we identified the issues that exist on wastewater management, or the challenges, if you will, that exist on wastewater management in the village, and recommended even examining the parking lots as a potential candidate locations back a good 10 years ago. Subsequent to that, we were retained by the village to address the Hook Pond water quality issues, and we issued 3 reports for the village on identifying what the issues are with Hook Pond, and as well as we prepared the analysis and obtained the permits associated with the dredging sediment removal from Town Pond. So we're pretty familiar with the water quality and wastewater issues in the village. And back in, we've been chatting with the mayor over the years just on townwide issues. And back in the end of the summer, was around August, September, the village reached out to us and asked us to examine the situation that existed. We put together a project scope of work that consisted of 2 things. One of them is a peer review of what had been done to date, and then examining alternative systems and presenting a recommended plan. So with that, if I could get some help for start sharing, and you all have a copy of my presentation. So
Let's just go to, I'm just going to share the main
we
screen.
used a lot of color ink. So
Okay.
you can follow along,
Okay.
with that.
Now let's go to your PowerPoint presentation right here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then why don't we go into from the beginning? Right. All right. And that should be good for you. Can you see that? Everything working out?
Yep. Fine.
Great.
That's
Fantastic.
great. Thank you.
For everyone in the audience, everyone at the board is seeing the projection right now. We'll work on eventually having the dual screen projecting properly to the audience as well. Thank you.
Okay. So what you see on the cover slide here is the aerial photo of the study area. The areas highlighted in yellow are the areas that the village identified back in a good 4 or 5 years ago. Let me call it areas of concern. And it was not just for the wastewater, it was also for parking and affordable housing. So that's our quote study area. We're addressing all of it except for Cove Hollow. Cove Hollow being so much farther away, we're recommending that be addressed subsequently for a technique that can be done in that area. Now, again, just to summarize, our scope of work was to review the existing work that had been completed and the data in the service areas. We identified and evaluated a whole range of alternative systems. We developed, if you will, a preliminary plan and invited and had Zoom meetings with both the county and the DEC regarding the plan, and then have presented a recommended plan in the report, and I'm going to go into that pretty quickly. The meetings were DEC and the health department. The one with the health department, it was just for advising them of what was being proposed because it is unique, as you'll see. Whereas the DC meetings is for permitting. DEC has the permit, not the health department. This is all state law. In many cases, the health department is always acting as an agent of DEC, but for municipalities, the DEC is the sole permitting agency. After we submitted our draft report to the village back in late December, around that time, the mayor was very, positive or forcefully positive in wanting to get official feedback from DEC that the proposed plan was, quote, permittable. Unfortunately, DEC doesn't do that. They'll just issue the permit. So as you'll see towards the end of the presentation, where that stands, and there still is efforts that are needed to obtain the DEC permit. But remember, when the permit's issued, you can go build it. So they're looking for a lot of details, and as you'll see, the primary motivation for them looking for needing the detail is their lack of familiarity with what's being proposed. And because of its importance, they just are looking for additional information. Okay, so now our examination of the peer review, we identified a number of, frankly, data conflicts and missing information. There was no final report. There was there was a number of documents that were issued. It's sort of a working documents. So we assembled them all and looked at them. And one of the issues, their flow estimates that were made, there was no basis that was really provided to the granular level that we could agree with them or not. And there was sewer layouts presented. And one of the recommendations was on where they recommended to put the wastewater treatment system. There was no description of the wastewater technology. So those were some of the handicaps that we identified or noted when we reviewed it, because we were using that as a launching pad, if you will, for the work that we were going to be doing. The one key item you'll see is that there were some flow estimates that we discovered were out of sync. Now, what we're proposing, so I'm cutting to the chase, if you will, give you the big picture and sort of what the end, and then we'll fill in the backstop of how we got there. So what we're recommending is that a wastewater collection system, what we like to be using is septic tank effluent system. What that means is that the septic tanks typically stay on the property and only the liquid goes to the treatment system. There's a lot of benefits associated with that, not the least of which is usually lower cost and ease of treatment of the effluent that goes to the treatment system. The second item is what we called, this is not a sewer plant, this is a water resource recovery facility. And we're recommending that that be located under the long-term parking lot at 2 Gingerbread Lane. And then thirdly, we're recommending that the reclaimed water be reused for subsurface irrigation at Herrick Park. What that would do is that A, would provide a beneficial reuse of the reclaimed water, as well as reduce irrigation demand for the field. And I'm aware of the village is actively involved in renovations or upgrading the park facility. How those things dovetail is to be determined. So at the bottom of that slide, you will see the process flow diagram of what I just described, of how the water, excuse me, the wastewater generated from the different predominantly commercial establishments, and then with a sewer system going to the treatment plant, and then from there going to irrigation reuse. Water either goes up by evapotranspiration or it's going to discharge into the groundwater. Okay, so and then the treatment process, I'll bring up one of the treatment techniques that we're recommending is the use of what's called advanced oxidation processes that will treat for the contaminants of emerging concern. It's a broad category for bad stuff, that the forever chemicals is one of them, and a number of other contaminants that fall under that umbrella, not the least of which are pharmaceuticals and personal care products that get into the wastewater. So this next slide illustrates the layout of the entire system. So you can see on that, the yellow lines are transporting the wastewater from those different establishments to the treatment location, a water resource recovery location on the parking lot. And then there's an identification of, there's a couple of pump stations that are needed in the facility. The one pump station would be basically in front of the post office area. That's a low spot. And then the other pump station would be basically in the large parking lot area, sort of across the street from Village Hall. And then the wastewater would be pumped from those locations, again, to the treatment site. And then the water from there then goes into the irrigation system. Now, this slide illustrates the treatment system, where it would fit within the parking lot, and basically all of the access would be on the median strips. So there would be manholes there, whereby any maintenance that would be necessary would be performed. And then you'll see the tankage. There's a fair amount of tankage, again, under the median strips that would be located. So the only thing that's visible, or let me call it above grade, is what we call the operations building. So we've located it there for the time being. That can be pretty much anywhere on the property. And we're not talking about a large building. We're really talking about maybe 25 by 25. And it's predominantly to be housing the electrical equipment and any lab facilities for the operators to test how well the system is working. Now, at the bottom of that slide, that's the process flow diagram of how water gets treated as it moves through the system. However, there is a tremendous amount of, I'm going to call it recirculation that occurs. This happens, what you're seeing at the bottom, the way it's engineered, it happens multiple times, which enables us to produce an effluent with a total nitrogen typically under 2 milligrams per liter, which is the best in the industry. The limits of technology are generally considered 3. So to achieve 2 is a significant, again, that's state of the art. And we have routinely achieved those low levels in a number of nearby locations. Okay, so again, everything's below grade. You probably well know that that parking lot, the one that we're using, really could use a new paving. So those are some of the benefits that would accrue from multiple use there. And then I'm going to let me go through the budgets, but then we're going to go into, I'll go quickly through how did we get to that spot and what other options, locations were identified. Here's the what's called capital cost. In other words, all costs associated with the project. We're looking at a project perhaps in the neighborhood 24 million. It's a little higher than what it was before, but we've had a serious amount of inflation, and it's better to be erring on the side of caution for budgeting purposes only, because the costs are going to be the costs. But that's the best that we think is probable. And we only assume, we assumed a 4% inflation rate between now and when construction would actually occur. So there's contingency in there. And actually, when we get closer to the next step, these budgets get better refined. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a quick snapshot of the previous work that was performed. And again, those are the study areas. This is a condensation of all the analysis that was done before, and I'll try to highlight some of the issues that we identified. The key one that was, they had 3 phases, and phases 1A and 1B were what they call the village center in the upper Newtown, and then 1B, phase 2 was the Gingerbread Railroad Avenue area. And then the large part of the residential area was phase 3, the residential area around Hook Pond. A conflict that we identified, if you look at the cumulative flow for phases 1A, 1B, and 2, you'll see they came up with 17,000 gallons per day. And as you'll see from what I'll show you shortly, the real number is well over 75,000 gallons per day. Any event, so that's their analysis, and their recommendation was to, excuse me, let me step back. This next slide illustrates the location of the alternate, or what we call candidate parcels for wastewater treatment and disposal. And they ranged from being in the center of the village all the way out to the airport. And so those are the properties that were examined. This next slide is a table of all of the properties that were examined by the previous consultant and ourselves. And this indicates the availability, which ones are in the village versus which ones are not. And then access, what's the land use, et cetera. What you'll see is that if you look at the column to the right, which parcels are within the village, those are the ones that have the most merit. We received some unofficial feedback that the town was not, I don't know how to best say this, I don't know if they opposed, but they were not going to be supportive of any treatment system that required going through the town property. Okay, so we had that overhang, if you will, of let me call it political acceptability of any of these candidate sites. And we all looked at them very closely in the field. The mayor was involved, village administrator and Billy we all looked at these things and these sites and really debated them over a number of occasions and issues. This is a summary of the evaluation of the candidate sites. And you'll see there that we recommended that basically only 2 of the sites should be on a quote short list for potential use. All of the other sites are outside the village, or there's just no room. There's very little, excuse me, these are the only properties that exist in the village. And the number 2 property is privately owned. So, so there is no other, besides the parking lot, there is no publicly owned property that would satisfy the requirement for siting a facility that's within the village proper. Okay. There is room at the DPW site. However, that requires traveling through the town, and that has been put aside. Now, what I would like to emphasize is the granular analysis that's been performed, in that we went and did a survey of every parcel, every building in the entire village, the study area. And as you'll see on this table here, for every parcel ID and where there were multiple uses, we identified what was the use that was there. For instance, the first one, restaurants, and we identified the number of seats that were there, or as best we could determine, and we assigned a wastewater flow. And that was done to every usable property within the study area in the village. And what we came up with by that parcel by parcel, building by building analysis is that the existing code flow allowances would really be 65,000 gallons per day. We put in, you'll see on the top there corner, you'll see that and then we put in a miscellaneous contingency of 10,000 gallons a day. So the round numbers, we're looking at a minimum of 75,000 gallons a day is the required size of the treatment system that to serve existing development. And we're sensitive to the CPF issue, should that be a potential funding source, okay? You'll see at the bottom there that that for each one of the study areas, they're all disaggregated by which properties are retail versus restaurants, residences, et cetera, to see where the demand, if you will, or the potential demand comes from. So again, these are all, we have a great database on what exists. And then just for reference purposes, created this table that illustrates the top 20 properties in the study areas in terms of flow. Okay, so so that says that your top 20 properties in terms of wastewater generation really represent 45% of the total. Okay, now is that going to be in the future? That's a separate item, but again, that's not unusual to see the larger ones to be the top 20 to get to be at least a third, if not half of the flow in a commercial area such as the village. Now, the other site that was a candidate, or the other quote sites that are really candidates that are, let me call it the only other that are viable, is the 29 King Road site, which is an industrial parcel, because we really focused on that area of the village because it's adjacent to the agricultural area and setbacks, and we have to worry about neighbors and all of that good thing. It was the best location. The mayor spent and the village administrator spent a lot of time, frankly, in communicating with property owners in that area that were being used for agricultural purposes, because that would have been an ideal location if we were surrounded by agricultural activity. So all of those options have been, let me say, they were heavily explored. I don't think we left one stone unturned. And again, the village has gone out and spoke with the number of those property owners as well. On that slide, you'll see the DPW site and where the footprint of a wastewater system there, if it would be held. So those are the other ones. And naturally, the basis for the parking lot is that we're not consuming land, not taking land out of tax rolls, and it's in your local control. And you can implement it, you know, at your discretion. Obviously, the other issue, though, it has to be permitted by DEC. So that leads us into, we had a number of communications with DEC, letters, you know, they sent us some initial review letters, and then we responded to that. This May 17th letter is their subsequent letter, and it was at that point that we had to advise that, you know, what the, and I'll just direct you to the email that's at the end from the staff person at DEC. And the key issue I would urge the trustees to focus on there is that, you know, because let me say, we challenged the requirements for all the information. And frankly, Assemblyman Thiel was very supportive and helped in the process. And DEC responded, just as you see there, that this is unique design that they're not used to seeing. So that's their basis for requesting the additional information, which is understandable. But now the need for providing that is really before the village. So in summary, the proposal is what for the wastewater, for the water resource recovery facility, again, is under the parking lot, not going to consume any parking spaces, as well as there's land, or we're not touching the other portion of the parking lot at all. So that's available there, if you will, for expansion as needed. And frankly, that was one of the questions that DEC even asked in the initial review.
So maybe you could just explain that a little more, because the parking lot to the right is really where the system would be.
Right.
The parking lot to the left is for future expansion. So, correct?
Yes, thank you. Yeah. And so we're relatively, you know, there's a fair amount of vacant land near it. It's the school property is their fields. And then this child care center is really the closest thing. Now, for the system, the questions are always about odor and noise. In terms of noise, all of the noise generating equipment except one fan is going to be below water. So you can't hear, you're not going to hear any of those pumps. And the fan is enclosed in a sound attenuating unit. In terms of odor, there's a very aggressive odor control system that basically ventilates all of the tankage where foul odors can be, pulls that air out, so there's a vacuum, if you will, that pulls that out and then pushes it through an odor filter. So in typical problems at wastewater treatment plant is that the bad gases, if you will, are allowed to escape. Whereas these things are going for where the bad gases are, they're going to be pretty much, if you will, airtight. And then there's a vacuum, if you will, that'll pull off that foul air and then purify it before it gets. The purification process is fairly simple. It's frankly pushing it through compost material that converts. It's mainly the hydrogen sulfides, and you mix them through that, and it basically the hydrogen sulfides get converted to sulfates, and no big deal. It all goes away. And we've used them for well over 30 years successfully in frankly, in similar areas where we engineered a number of systems, not that dissimilar from what we're talking about here in Malibu, California, 15 years ago. And, you know, never had an odor complaint from fancy restaurants and retail establishments. And the treatment system was in a parking lot. So it's very similar. Obviously, this one's a little bit larger and a little more sewering, but again, the technology there, as a matter of fact, that was approved by the state to be able to produce what's referred to as Title 22 unrestricted non-potable reuse water. In other words, we produce water that could be used for anything except potable purposes. So, and that's what we're talking about doing here. And the treatment processes that we're talking about doing here are very much the same as the ones that we've done before. And except we've made refinements naturally. So, so the technology has been around for over 20 years. We've engineered these, and the challenge is obviously is going to be working in a relatively well-developed area. So I don't want to diminish the construction issues. That'll be issues, but they'll be temporary during construction. But the operation of the facility is pretty simple. Doesn't require a lot of sophisticated and frankly, and the one in Malibu, the operator went there for 4 hours a week, and it was mainly to collect samples. So the maintenance is we engineer systems that we focus on low maintenance systems, so they don't become a big deal, because they will. The other beauty of the approach is that it's easy to turn on and turn off. The system is heavily modularized, so that it, let's say at the beginning of the season, units would be opened up, if you will, and towards the end of the system, certain units would be shut down because they're not needed. And this is same thing that we've done over in South Hampton and Hampton Bays at the Canoe Place Inn, and that system's been operating now for a good 2 years, and with total nitrogen averaging under 2 there, and the operator goes there twice a week because they have to by the county, but it's just to collect samples. So the maintenance everything's relatively automatic. So again, there's similar facilities nearby, and again, facilities that have been operating for a long time. And we recommend this type of a technology versus what's called activated sludge, because they require a lot of operator attention, as well as they don't respond well to changing flow conditions. Whereas this type of system responds well, short answer. So weekend flows, high seasonal flows, not a problem. The other benefit is that your high flows are during the summer, warm period. Treatment systems work better. It's biological, during a summer period. So we would expect the water quality coming out to be, exemplary. It will more than meet any requirements. So with that, happy to. I hope that is helpful in terms of that's the results of the work. We've, per my discussions with the mayor, we've submitted a proposal to the village to complete the.
So let me interrupt, and let me bring everybody up to speed on the village's side of this. So when we first came into office, there was a study in progress by Nelson Pope. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I think the village spent 150,000 for that.
That was the estimate. I don't know if that was the ultimate price.
Somewhere around that.
120, as I recall.
So that was taxpayer money. There was no grant for that, if I'm correct, right?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. So we came into office and we were having a difficult time really getting this project moving with that current company. So I reached out to my friend Pio, who has been involved in our township for many, many years, and actually wrote the studies that from Hook Pond and recommended that we do a sewer system back in 2013. So Nelson Pope, the prior company, had identified several different potential locations, which we have exhausted. We can't use them for various reasons. One that was identified here on North Main Street is under a deed or something, an easement that doesn't allow it. Other locations were not large enough. Just correct me if I'm missing anything.
Yeah, we looked at the oil terminal.
Right, the oil, the old Skank Fuel property, not large enough. So PO actually came up with this underground plan, which I think is great. The only issue is that the state has never granted this in its history yet. So we're kind of, just waiting for the state to make a decision. So we were able to, Dominique was able to, our treasurer, secure a $115,000 grant from the state that we could use to explore these different options. So PO, we hired PO's firm at 50,000, I think it was.
42 and change.
Right. So figured just less than half of our grant. And we were hoping to have an answer from DEC as to whether this would be permitted or not. Well, you heard in PO's presentation, we do not have that answer yet. So I asked PO to put together a proposal to move forward with this project to get an answer from New York State at a maximum cost of another $50,000, no matter how long it takes. It might be less than 50,000. It just depends on what the state, but it won't cost the village through our grant any more than 50,000 for your services until we get a definite answer, yes or no, from the state of New York. In my opinion, this is the best location just because it's underground and it only has a small building above ground. You wouldn't even notice this. Our only other option is to go to our highway department, which is located in the town of East Hampton. That would require us to go through their planning department, correct? Pio?
Yeah, Billy knows this, right? They would
I
have to.
believe you would have to
Right.
go through a site plan review.
So we're
process.
kind of at a crossroads right now with the village. We could either abandon PO's idea and focus only on the highway department and put out a bid to get somebody to give us a price and then start the process with the town. Or we could exhaust this idea. And if it then is turned down, we could then go to option B, which would be put it out to an RFP and use the highway department as our place and then start the process with the town. This would be a lot simpler because we do all the permissions would come through the village and not through another agency other than the state. So that's kind of where we are. So that's pretty
No, it's
pretty
well-
accurate
well
where we
stated.
are.
Well stated.
So we can table this and we can all talk about it, or what I'd like you to do is if anybody would like, and I did this, I met with Pio over in Hampton Bays and he did this similar project for a condominium complex, it's all underground and you could see actually what it looks like.
Yeah, I went with you.
Yeah, Sandra went with me. So if you'd like to do that, we could table this and we could come back to this in August or the end of July, actually. Right? We have a meeting at the end of July. We could come back July 29th and then we can make a determination whether we want to spend the extra grant money to move forward on the parking lot project, or we want to abandon the parking lot project and go for an RFP and put out a bid for the highway department. Does that sound?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely.
Did you, the questions that they had from the emails from Melissa Scott, did you answer those questions?
Not the May 17th.
No. So
That's
that would
when-
be the next phase where you.
Yeah, because,
It's a lot of work. It's
It's-
beyond the scope of what we hired him for.
they are looking for a lot more detail. And our scope did not include applying for the permit. It was more to just have discussions with them. So we frankly went the extra mile and actually made the initial application to create the dialogue. But when we saw that they want a lot of engineering work done.
So that's what would be done in the next phase.
Yeah, well, that's correct. Yeah, it would be responding to all their comment. One of the major items on there is they want secret addressed. And that's a requirement. The other pieces of it are predominantly,
Pio, could you just explain that to, the board and the public, what that is?
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the secret, they're going to require a long-form environmental assessment. The board is going to have, I assume, is going to adopt itself as the lead agency, and you'll make a determination. We would expect it to be a negative determination that it does not require environmental impact statement. And that's the drill. And that applies to any project, wherever it is. So that's part of, because what they're doing is they're basically clearing, making, and this is not totally unusual, but they're really saying, we want to make sure that if we give you the permit, all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
And then another question, how long would it take, say you have the green light to do these phases, and how much the construction phase, and will it shut down parts of the village for a
Oh,
long
well,
time?
yeah, I mean, there is a timeline in the report. But, we're looking at, once this next phase is done, and let's say the permit is issued, then the village goes to a map and plan, because then the next steps is the creation of a sewer district. And then once that district is formed, that, under the best of circumstances, I would say this next phase probably is going to take up to 6 months. So let's assume by the end of the year, it would be completed. And let's assume everything's positive. I would look for the village to establish go down the road of establishing the district. One of the steps is preparation, map, and plan. The vast majority of it is done as part of this work, but there's obviously the legal pieces, public hearings, et cetera. You could establish that within 6 months. And then after that, you would pursue bonding authority, and that would be subject to permissive referendums. That once you have that, you now have the authority as a sewer district, and you have the funding capability with the bonding to then proceed with detailed design. Detailed design is going to take easy 18 months, 18 to perhaps 24 months. And then construction would start, let's say within 6+ months after that. So you're looking, at the end of the day, I always tell clients, something like this is easy 4 years from where we are today, but plan on 5 before, let me say, startup occurs.
We also thought we would have the approval from DEC by December of 21, which didn't happen. So we got kind of sidetracked with all these questions from DEC, and then the scope of PO's work expired, or he fulfilled it, and now there's all this new stuff from the state. So,
well, what they're doing is frankly, we went through the drill with the county for the project we did in Hampton Bays. It took 2 years in multiple, because they're in Suffolk County and on Long Island, the technologies that are used there's not a lot of variety. So we've had to go through, let me call it a sharing of information process.
So just to clear up, the Suffolk County Department of Health regulates private projects.
Right.
And the DEC, Department of Health,
DEC.
regulates governmental projects.
Yeah. Department of Public Health acts as DEC's agent
Right.
for private, and they have jurisdiction. But what we're talking about here in terms of the technology is exactly what's down the street. It's scale. All it is, it's basically the same thing, but just bigger scale. And think of it, modular. So, from one person, and we tried that position with them, but they want more information. Now, my opinion, they don't need it, but they need it for their, professional purposes. And, I respect that.
Regarding the laundry list that we're looking at, other than the secret determination, the long form review, is there anything else that stands out as being problematic or difficult?
No, it's all level of detail. For instance, they want some virtually they want some construction drawings of they want to see some details on what's it going to look like. So, not a problem. Provide, just now we're getting into a lot of detail.
Right.
And
So,
we frankly made an attempt. We did add quite a bit to our concept plan to provide the answers to that, but there's a lot of detail that they're looking for. We didn't see anything. That's a good question, trustee, that we didn't see anything there that scared us. But it just takes time.
So it's something that we can easily answer, that we can do.
Yeah. I mean, this is not a problem for us to respond to. It's just going to take time.
And the grant money.
And, we did the college try of trying to respond, but then we had to say, well, we can't do anymore.
right.
We,
Do you have anything to add, Bill?
No, I have nothing. Nope.
I have a question. So if we, can you hear me on this? If we decided to table this and then not spend the $50,000 and go the other route, what kind of timeline are we looking at for that?
I'm going to give that to you.
well,
No, there's nobody behind you.
no, I was gonna say, well, you're looking at, I mean, first of all, you would have to select somebody to do the work, okay? And depending on whether you selected us automatically or else you go out to bid. If you go out to bid, that adds easy 4 months, okay? And then going through the town's process, Billy can probably answer this better than I, but it's gonna be a plan review. And then, you're gonna run into the issues like, I'm sure we'll even in the village deal with the issues of neighbors and traffic and noise, and how long it's gonna take to go through that is, anybody's guess.
Yeah. So my feeling on this is that we should exhaust the parking lot option through DEC. And once they tell us no, then we have no choice but to then go to the town. Because I could see the first question is going to be, why don't you put it on village property? And if we have a viable location, we should explore that until we're told no. That's my opinion, since and I hate to say it's only going to cost us another $50,000, but
It's from the
in the
grant.
scheme of things, when this is going to be a $28 million project, $50,000, if it's approved, would be well worth it. There is one other location in the village that PO described, which is 29 King Street, which is a private business, but that would require us to take that property, which is not going to be a pleasant experience for us or the owner. So that's
Those
my
are
recommendation,
options.
but I'm happy to table it until you guys have more time to think about it. And we can talk about it again at our next meeting, which is only in 2 weeks or so, 3 weeks, or we can move forward. So it's up to the board.
I would say to move forward.
I'd like to move forward as well.
All right, so we'll move forward with that.
Billy, with the in secret determination and the EIS, do you have any feelings about having to do an environmental impact statement or what?
Well, it may not require an environmental impact statement. It's under PO scope, I think, in his proposal to prepare the long form environmental assessment form for the board. The board can use that information and decide whether or not it's enough to make a secret declaration or a secret determination without an environmental impact statement. So it'll be up to the board to decide. I don't know at this point whether or not you'd actually have to do a full-blown environmental impact statement.
I have not seen, there's been a number of sewer districts pursued in the South Fork over the past 10, 15 years. I don't remember any of them going to an EIS. There's environmental assessment, which is proposed to be done, but I don't know any of them that went to environmental impact statement.
I mean,
Now you're talking 1.5 years and a lot of money.
Did West Hampton Beach need it? They did not need one.
so
I understand.
what this plan, what the whole project is we're taking the existing sewage that's being generated by the existing uses and treating it and discharging it in the same groundwater management zone that it's being generated in, only at a much lower level of nitrogen and phosphorus. So the perceived environmental benefit is there. We're not talking about increasing density or adding density at this point. I think those are the questions that could trigger, potential other impacts. But this is purely of taking the existing flow, treating it to a much more acceptable level. So to me, it's a water quality, benefit.
All right, great. So,
There are negative impacts, but they're construction related, temporary. And then there's mitigation measures that are identified. And that's some of the detail that they're looking for is, how the straw bales and silt fences, where they're going to be in relation to where the wetlands are, et cetera. So we're down at a very, granular level on their
Right.
review, which I frankly would not have expected till later on.
right. Well, all right. So Vinny, how do we move forward with this? Next meeting or? Okay. All right. So we'll submit that proposal to Marcos. We'll get it on for the next meeting and we'll approve it at the next agenda on the next meeting.
All right, thank you.
Which is
very
only
much.
2 weeks.
Appreciate your confidence. Thank you.
Thanks, Pio, for all your work.
All right, my pleasure. Thank you. It's a pleasure been working with you.
All right. All right, ready to move forward? Any public comment? Okay. So we'll move into the resolutions. So with these, for the new board members, June will read the resolution and then somebody will make a motion, somebody will second it, and then we'll vote on it. All right? June, are you ready?
Resolution number 139, accept results of village election conducted on June 21st, 2022.
Motion to accept?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Resolution number 140, acknowledge Sarah Amidon and Carrie Doyle as village trustees, terms to expire 2026.
So move?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
141, set regular monthly meeting date of the Board of Trustees for the third Friday and work sessions for the first Thursday of each month at 11 a.m. to be held at the Emergency Services Building, 1 Cedar Street.
So before we make a motion, I just want to check the work sessions we're going to do at different remote locations, Vinny. So do we need to clarify that in this or?
Just to say that exceptions would be held, but locations to be determined.
Okay, so we'll set the regular monthly meeting date of the Board of Trustees for the third Friday and work sessions for the first Thursday of each month at 11 a.m. The regular board meetings will be held at the Emergency Services Building, and the work sessions will be held at remote locations to be determined. Can I get a motion?
Motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor? Passed and carried. So as I said earlier, we're going to have our work sessions at a historic location somewhere in the village. And Hugh King, our village historian, will give us the history of each location. And then whether it is the library or it's a historic inn, then the manager or owner of that location will also give us current events or any other information that may be pertinent for us to know about. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I've thought about this for a long time, and I think it'll be a fun time for the public as well as the board. The work sessions, when we do the work sessions, it'll just be the board and the attorney, the village administrator, and whichever department head we invite. So if we're discussing about something about the building department, it would be Tom. If it's something with an environmental or something in our planning, we'll invite the village planner. This way we don't have to have everybody at our work sessions where it's not really necessary. All right, so that'll be the plan moving forward. June?
142, authorize payment in advance of audit claims for public utility services, postage, freight, and express charges, medical insurance premiums, employee reimbursements, and the village attorney for the 2022-2023 fiscal year.
So move?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
143, approve employee and appointed officers' contracts and salary schedule effective August 1st, 2022. Members and chairs, of various committees, official depositories, official newspaper, and professional consultants as listed.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Resolution 144, create aesthetics committee, which would be a historic preservation subcommittee. Sarah Ammon and Carrie Doyle co-chairs.
So
Um,
move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Number 145, appoint Susan Stakowski as registrar at the annual salary of $1,000 and Linda Byer as deputy registrar at the annual salary of $600.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
146, reappoint Hugh R. King as village historian at no additional compensation.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
I always feel bad.
Passed and carried.
Can't give him a dollar.
And 147, reappoint John McGurk III as chairman of the ZBA effective August 1st, term to expire July 31st, 2023.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
148, reappoint Robert Caruso as chair of the planning board and design review board and Amy Deline as vice chair of the DRB.
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Passed and carried.
149, accept Carrie Doyle's resignation as a member of the ZBA effective immediately.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Trustee Doyle's abstaining, right?
Correct.
Thank you. 150, reappoint Kristen Corwin, Elizabeth Ann Duffy, and Amy Daleen as members of the DRB, term to expire 2024.
Just want to hold up a second. Let me just reread that. It's going to be reappoint Kristen Corwin for a one-year term, Elizabeth Ann Duffy and Amy Deline for two-year terms as members of the DRB to expire 2023 and 2024.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
151, employ seasonal beach staff, lifeguard subs, Matt Norkland and Charles Patelau at $19 an hour, Alex Yurkowicz and Kevin Farrell at $18 an hour, and beach attendants Claire McGovern at $15 an hour and Will Linder at $14 an hour.
Motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
152, approve a 50-cent per hour increase for lifeguard Lieutenant Haley Nealand and employ Rowan O'Brien as a beach attendant at $12 per hour.
Motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
153, authorize the transfer of up to $500,000 from the undesignated fund balance to the capital reserve fund.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
154, authorizing the transfer of up to $350,000 from the undesignated fund balance to the employee benefit leave reserve fund.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
155, approve the Whitmore's $8,450 estimate to remove a damaged large sycamore maple at Herrick Park.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried. Just hold it. Which tree is that, Dave?
Tree borders the Dayton property alongside the Pleasant Lane property.
Okay.
Side. So if you're looking from the long-term parking, straight in along that west property line, it's the property right behind Ken Lawrence.
Oh, on that side.
Second property.
Okay, so it's closer to Pleasant Lane.
Yeah, it borders, it's 2/3 on their property, 1/3 on our property.
Got it. You actually showed it to me. Yeah. I remember now. Okay. Did we vote on that?
So move.
Too late. 6, approve NICID's $38,125 estimate to perform digital scanning services of file documents, and that would be off a state contract at approximately 225,000 pages.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
157-2022, authorizing the village attorney's office to perform listed actions.
Second.
All in favor? Passed and carried.
Resolution 158, resolved that the village attorney's office is hereby appointed to represent the Board of Appeals of the Village of East Hampton in actions and proceedings to which the board is a party, and the village attorney's office is further authorized to appear before the Village of East Hampton as an advocate on behalf of the Village of East Hampton.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
159, resolved that Susan Stokowski be and is hereby authorized, empowered, and directed to notify the New York State Employees Retirement System and the Suffolk County Civil Service Department that during 2022-2023 fiscal year, the village administrator, the treasurer, the Mayor Larson may sign all payrolls for the Village of East Hampton.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
160, resolved during the 2023 fiscal year, the following individuals are authorized to access the payroll production system: Mayor Jerry Larson, Marcos Balladron, Dominique Cummings, Susan Stokowski, and Petrona Plimpton Mosley.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
161, resolved that the comptroller and/or village attorneys be and hereby are authorized to obtain within budgetary limits an appraisal or updated thereof of any village property, be it real or personal, and be it further resolved that the village treasurer and the village administrator be and hereby is authorized to obtain within budgetary limits actuarial services.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
162, resolved that any responsibility for administration of the investment program of the villages East Hampton is delegated to the village administrator and the village treasurer to invest monies, designate banks and/or trust companies as depositories of the Village of East Hampton, and hereby are authorized to contract for the purchase of investments or establishing any bank or trust accounts. And be it further resolved that the current investment policy and cash management policy are hereby adopted and ratified.
Motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
163, authorizing the village administrator to invest idle funds of the Village of East Hampton for the 2022-2023 fiscal year pursuant to law.
Motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Banks and depositories.
Thank you. 164, approve all the banks and depositories.
Motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
165,
Authorization to enter service contracts.
approve authorization to enter into service contracts.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
I owe you croissants. 166, adopt procurement policy, no changes from the current policy.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
Yay. Resolution, this is an addendum, resolution 167-2022, appoint Bradford Billet as emergency manager.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried. If I could just comment on this. So Brad has extensive experience with the New York City emergency management. And at the request of the village police chief, asked to put Brad as the emergency manager, and the chief of police, who was the emergency manager, is going to now act as the public safety coordinator for all of the village. So in preparing for an emergency, the chief will coordinate with the fire department, the ambulance, the highway department. And during emergencies, that's when the emergency manager and the coordinator will work together with all of the department heads and our emergency management room, which we have here at village headquarters. So it should work out very well, having some additional help for the chief. Mike has done a great job with it over the years. We, years ago, when I was chief, we set up this emergency management room, which was the current chief's idea. And it's been working very well ever since. So we've had a lot of hurricanes, blizzards, tropical storms that it's come very in handy with. And so it should work well. Is there anything else?
That's it.
No? All right. I'm the mayor.
It's worth pointing out that my position is just an assignment.
And no additional compensation.
Correct. It's
Excellent.
an assignment.
You and Hugh King.
I want to also say Brad Billet, he has a remarkable background with the city fire deputy commissioner. He's also been to management schools, naval postgraduate school. So
Yeah.
Without equal in terms of qualification.
I'd ask him to speak, but that's a long speech. So can I get, we're going to, after this meeting's adjourned, we're going to go into executive session to talk about some legal issues. And if there's any reason to come back, I'll notify the Star and the press. All right, can I get a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Meeting is closed.